Hello there and welcome to a Friday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the next 3 hours, and I'd love to get your take on all of them. The phone line and the text line are the same for your convenience. 719-247-1313 if you would like to win some last-minute tickets to see Air Force take on Merrimack tomorrow afternoon in the season opener. That number is going to be your ticket for your chance to win. Allow us to proceed. Last night was maybe the perfect season opener for the Colorado Buffaloes. Not perfect for North Dakota State, not perfect for Colorado, but it's perfect for the discourse. If you are a fan of the discourse surrounding this team to continue the way it is, it was the perfect game for you last night. If you love the Colorado Buffaloes, there's a lot to love in that game. If you hate the Colorado Buffaloes, there's a lot to hate in that football game. And what Deion Sanders said immediately when sitting down at the post-game press conferences encapsulates exactly that.
You ever felt like you won, but you didn't win? It's almost like we had more points than they did. Giving up the last touchdown on the run, that bothered me because we pride ourselves on going to get the quarterback, and we have a multitude of young men that can go get the quarterback, and we didn't get that done. But I'm thankful. I'm happy we got the W. Miss Peggy's one step closer to the dream and the vision that we have for her, as well as I think 31 NFL scouts are on hand tonight, and I think they saw what they came to see.
And what they came to see is what you love about last night's game if you're a Colorado Buffaloes fan. CU has Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and no one else in the Big 12 does. That's what you're pinning your thoughts on last night on. Shedeur and Travis Hunter. I said yesterday that because of the continuity that North Dakota State had and the lack of continuity CU had, last night had to be a Shedeur Sanders game. And it was. He was brilliant. 26 of 34, 445 yards, 4 touchdowns. 1 interception, but you saw it. That's not on Shedeur. He was fantastic. And 1 sack in the first half? That was it. If you have any doubt that Shedeur Sanders is the most talented quarterback in college football, please do me a favor. Watch the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half and tell me that Shedeur Sanders is not the most talented quarterback in college football. The mobility, the decision-making, the arm, and he's calling those plays. In those situations, it is Shedeur who is deciding what to do with the football. This is what those NFL scouts, and I don't know what teams they were representing, or I guess my question would be, who is missing from that? But of those scouts that may be looking for a quarterback, I think they saw, to Deion Sanders' point, exactly what they needed to see. This guy is the most talented quarterback in college football and should be the first quarterback off the board in April. And I've been there. I've been there with Shedeur. How can you not say that he should be the number one quarterback off the board? The only thing that you just need to confirm is what those sack numbers are about, truly. And that will play itself out through the season. But that's not going to prohibit a quarterback needy team for taking him first. Now, Deion Sanders not wanting his son to go to franchise X may prevent them from taking Shedeur Sanders, but he is the most talented quarterback in college football. And if CU wins, he'll be in the Heisman Trophy conversation. The only thing you worry about is that Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck have a better chance of racking up a lot of wins than Shedeur does. But last night against a good North Dakota State team, Shedeur was absolutely brilliant. And then you have Travis Hunter. Right? And then there's Mod. Oh, a guy that plays every snap but two last night and makes one of the most insane catches that you're going to see in this college football season. All he does is play both defensive back and wide receiver at a high level. And even I continue to fall victim to Shedeur Sanders kind of sucking all the air out of the room. And when people talk about the Heisman, I was talking about, Travis Hunter and the Heisman last year, but it's going to be hard if Shedeur and Travis both play at this level consistently. I think Shedeur wins that tiebreaker, if you will, because he's the one delivering the ball to Travis Hunter. What Travis Hunter is doing is amazing. And you think of Charles Woodson, right? You think of Champ Bailey at Georgia, the graphic that ESPN put up last night, all of those guys. He's unbelievable. He's probably the most talented player in college football, but it's football. So the quarterback tends to win any argument. If both players continue down this path, I think Shedeur has a better chance of winning the Heisman than Travis Hunter. But that's not to detract from Travis Hunter. It's just, hey, as a corner, you could throw away from him. With the depth that CU has at wide receiver, Shedeur's going to be looking in other directions. Both things can be true, that Shedeur Sanders is CU's best chance to win the Heisman, but Travis Hunter is the most talented player in college football. But both of those things can be true at the same time, because I've seen it, and so have you. That catch he made that ultimately put CU out in front for good, gave them the cushion that they needed to withstand that late rally by North Dakota State. That catch was unreal. Here was Mark Johnson on the call last night.
Shotgun snap taken by Shedeur, throws it right side. Travis Hunter reaches up, makes a spectacular grab. Touchdown! Touchdown, Colorado! He's an alien. He's a freak. He's a mutant. He's the best player in college football.
Yeah, that one of 3 touchdowns that Travis Hunter had last night. And he talked about that catch that he made at the corner of the end zone.
It's funny because he got on me for not catching the one that we called a flag because I told him to throw me the ball no matter what. So he got mad at me. He was like, I don't care, catch the ball. So that one, I just know I had to catch the ball. I had no other choice, no other option. So whatever I had to do to get the ball, I was going to get it.
I don't think we have seen someone quite like Travis Hunter. And I saw Charles Woodson. I think he was on Bussin' with the Boys a couple of days ago. Like, even he admitted, like, it looked like I played offense. I really didn't. Travis Hunter legitimately plays both and has an impact on both sides of the football. I don't know that we've legitimately seen this, what Hunter is doing. And I know he did it all last year, but we got so caught up in CU losing and the sack Shedeur was taking and all that kind of stuff. I think we got a little bit complacent, I'll say, with Travis Hunter and what he's doing. And maybe last night is a good reminder. Don't get complacent. Don't take it for granted what Travis Hunter is doing. And I don't make this comparison lightly, but this is Shohei Ohtani stuff, what Travis Hunter is doing. Because it's not just that he does both. Right? And that's the case with Shohei Ohtani. It's not just that Shohei does both, hit and pitch. It's that Shohei Ohtani is a Cy Young candidate as a pitcher and an MVP candidate as a hitter. That's what Travis Hunter is doing on both sides of the football. He's one of the best wide receivers in the country, and he might be the best defensive back in the country. So you can marvel at the stamina, you can marvel at some of it, but understand that he's doing both at an elite level. He's not just out there because CU doesn't have any other options. And a couple of the grabs he made last night were terrific. And he just moseys back on out there and takes his spot in the secondary. If you are a Colorado fan, that's what you lean on today. Because the other side of the aisle has some legitimate claims. Legitimate. And we'll talk about those as we move through the program. But what you are clinging to. Because think about it. Shedeur ran into Caleb Williams. There was at least one game last year where the Colorado Buffaloes did not have the best quarterback on the field. It was rare, but it happened. In the Big 12, every single game, the Colorado Buffaloes will have the best quarterback and the best player on the field. It was a little too close for comfort. I told you it would be close. Give credit to North Dakota State. But if you get that from those two guys every single night, that's going to win a lot of games. I know people will say don't be impressed with a victory like that over North Dakota State. When it comes to Travis Hunter and Shedeur, be very impressed. Be very impressed. That's what those scouts came to see. And a lot of people there at Folsom Field last night came to see that. And boy, were they treated to a show from Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on last night's win for the Colorado Buffaloes. There is the other side of the coin, certainly, when it comes to the Buffs and questioning how much better this team actually is. Get into that in a little bit. But coming up in the meantime, let's stick with Travis Hunter. And the question for Travis, to DB or not to be in the NFL? The Colorado State Fair is entering its final weekend. It runs through Monday, September 2nd. Make sure you get down to Pueblo to check out all the free attractions, the carnival, concerts, Ludacris tomorrow night, the rodeo. They run through the finish line here. They got a lot of stuff going on all throughout the weekend. And on Monday, they got a lot of stuff going on. So plan your trip at coloradostatefair.com. So now that we are a bit closer, and this was brought up last year quite a bit, but now that Travis Hunter is on essentially the precipice of going to the National Football League, the question is, how would teams like to use him? And how would he like to be used? Because the answers could be different. I will tell you, watching Travis Hunter, my primary focus for him would be defensive back. Not saying I wouldn't use him as a wide receiver. I would. You have a guy like that that has that kind of fitness level, that has that kind of talent on both sides of the football. A coach would be crazy not to utilize that. But Travis Hunter, if I'm drafting him, and he very well could be the top non-quarterback taken in this draft. Obviously, it depends on team where that actually ends up, because you think, well, New England could be one of the worst teams. They have Drake May. Carolina could be one of the worst teams. Would they be ready to bail on Bryce Young for Shador? But the top non-quarterback in April, more likely than not, will be Travis Hunter. But I would be looking at him first and foremost as a defensive back. I think that's what translates more. I don't think he's a number one elite Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level receiver in the NFL. But I think he could be in a group with Pat Surtain. So that's where the most upside when it comes to Travis Hunter is his corner. But if he can do both, that's what's going to elevate him. Because I would not advise an NFL team to take Travis Hunter as strictly a defensive back or strictly a wide receiver. If he was one or the other, Travis Hunter is not a top 5 pick. Because there's too much depth at wide receiver every year in the draft to be taking a wide receiver that high. And there's a team about 45 to 50 miles up the road from here that found out that drafting even arguably the best corner in football doesn't get you very much if you don't have some other things buttoned up. Travis Hunter will play both at the NFL level. But what I would caution against here, and it's going to be fascinating to watch, rookies have a lot on their plate. Right? And ESPN threw the graphic up there last night with Champ Bailey and Chris Gamble and Charles Woodson, and threw those two-way college stars out there. Do you notice something? One, notice that almost all of them, except for Miles Jack, if memory serves, and Miles Jack was a linebacker, so I could say they all ended up on the defensive side of the ball. Champ Bailey didn't get a lot of run as a two-way player. If anyone has the ability to legitimately do both, it's Travis Hunter. Because it's not gimmicky with him. I think with some of those other guys, there was not Woodson, but some of the other guys on that list, Champ Bailey, it was a little gimmicky playing both sides in college. Champ Bailey was a corner, and he was one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time. So I think, one, that tells you that I think NFL teams are going to be moving Travis more to defensive back. But I think he, more than anybody on that graphic last night, has a legitimate shot of being an impact player on both sides. But I focus on him as a defensive back. The ball skills that he has would make him one of the best corners in the NFL. I would focus him there, get him a little bit of work as a wide receiver, and as he gets used to the NFL, as he acclimates himself, then you can kind of build up his offensive role. Now, what would Travis like to be? And I'm sure right now he'll say both. I want to do both. But Chris Harris, Broncos great, pointed this out last night on social media. If Travis Hunter wants to maximize his earning potential at the NFL level, he'll need to be a wide receiver. If you remember back in 2014, Jimmy Graham, right? And this is like the heyday of Jimmy Graham when he was a problem. He wanted to reclassify or classify as a wide receiver, saying, I have the production of a wide receiver. They use me like as a wide receiver. That's my job. I'm not a prototypical tight end. Classify me as a wide receiver. So the franchise tag would be greater. And a lot of these deals that are done in the NFL are based on the franchise tag number, right? So Jimmy Graham fought the NFL on that to be classified as a wide receiver despite everyone saying he's a tight end. That went to arbitration, and the arbitrator ruled against Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was not able to classify himself as a wide receiver. Now, will Travis Hunter have more of a legitimate claim? I think he will, because that will be his other position. But if it comes down to snaps, if it comes down to the way that a team looks at him, it's going to be defensive back. And I'm sure that there's going to be some kind of a dispute about 4 years into Travis Hunter's NFL career on how he is classified. I think he would like to legitimately try and do both. But the way that I think NFL teams are going to view him and the way they're going to use him, it's going to be more as a defensive back. But that's down the road stuff. If Travis Hunter wants to have the greatest success he can in his career, be the best player he can be, defensive back should be the route that he goes. First and foremost. Learn that position at an NFL level. You know, maybe he's used as a decoy or used in special packages on the offensive side early in his career, but really be a defensive back. I think that's what he's best at. I think that's where he has more value, and that's where I think he can maximize his career. If it's about finances, he should say he's a wide receiver. But we'll see how that goes. But legitimately, he has a chance to do both. And think about it. If two of the worst teams in the NFL are New England and Carolina, especially Carolina. Dion talks about Shador and being worried about where he's going to go and wanting to set him up for success. Let's have that conversation about Travis Hunter. Because if you're Carolina, you have traded DJ Moore, you've traded Christian McCaffrey, you are bereft of playmakers. And here comes Travis Hunter. I would worry about him landing in an organization like that their natural inclination is, let's do both, all gas, no brakes, let's just throw him out there out of desperation. And I don't think that's what's best for Travis Hunter. And making the Shohei Ohtani comparison again, Shohei Ohtani was both in a professional league. Say what you will about Japanese baseball, but it's a professional league. He's been working at both as a paid professional for years before he came over to Major League Baseball. Travis Hunter's not going to get the time that Shohei Ohtani did. He's not going to be as ready to do both as Shohei Ohtani was. But really, you look at the top of the draft, if you're a team that doesn't need a quarterback, you're probably a team that needs playmakers. I'm trying to think of the team off the top of my head. Barring injury, right? A significant injury to a quarterback or something like that puts a team that may be pretty good, may have playmakers and a quarterback near the top of the draft. Maybe a team trades up. But it's like, if Carolina or New England are up there, I would worry a little bit that they would really need Travis to do both. Considering what they have on the line with Drake May and Bryce Young. But there's a world where the Colorado Buffaloes have the top 2 picks in the draft. And wouldn't that be quite the feather in the cap of Deion Sanders? Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Do you see Travis, what position do you think Travis is better at? And do you think he can legitimately pull off being a two-way player in the NFL? Because we haven't seen it. Since I've been alive, I'll say. When the film was black and white, yeah, I know some guys play both sides of the football. Name the guy that legitimately did both. I think he has the chance to be that. But he's going to need to land in the right place that understands what's best for maximizing Travis Hunter and understanding what it is that he does best and nurturing that skill set while bringing the other thing along a little bit slower. 719-247-1313. Keep that number handy, even if you're not texting in your thoughts on the Colorado Buffaloes win last night, because coming up next, I have a 4-pack of tickets, giving away a 4-pack of tickets to Air Force Merrimack every hour today. And your first chance to win is next. Tomorrow, the Air Force Falcons kick off their 2024 season at revamped Falcons Stadium against Merrimack. They are the Warriors, if you were wondering. There's some conversation about that throughout the week in the circles I run around in. They are the Warriors. They are not the ironclad ships, which would be a very long name to have. And it is a poor attempt at historical humor from me. The Merrimack Warriors are who they are playing. Kickoff is at 1:30 if you would like to go and take 3 people that you hold in high regard. I have a 4-pack of tickets for the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name, first and last, if you don't mind, to 719-247-1313. Speaking of said text line, on the topic of Travis Hunter and his NFL future, Jason says, with the market for wide receivers as it is, I see absolutely no reasons why Travis would want to declare as a defensive back. Unfortunately, from what I have been able to gather, it's not really about what he says he is. It's about where he plays and what his team. This is the NFL, after all. There is no league that has more power over their players than the National Football League. It's not up to him. At least he can't just say, I'm a wide receiver, and then play the vast majority of snaps during his rookie deal at defensive back. It's going to be fascinating, though. If he goes somewhere that really utilizes him on both sides of the football, it's going to be a historic case when it inevitably goes to arbitration, as whatever team drafts him tries to save a few shekels when it's time for Travis to get a new contract. But this is why, in part, this is exactly why Jimmy Graham was not able to be reclassified. But again, Travis Hunter's going to have more of a legitimate gripe than Jimmy Graham did. Be fascinating. Absolutely. Speaking of the wide receiver market, what was all this for? All this consternation, and I feel like I am owed time in my life back when it comes to Brandon Ayuk. I want this time back. All of this stuff about Pittsburgh and Brandon Ayuk, just for him to sign not just a 1 year, not just to decide I'm staying at San Francisco. Because I thought that was happening all along. I did not think that Brandon Ayuk was going to get traded. The 49ers, it's like they're on vacation and they got to go to work tomorrow or whatever, metaphor you want to use, but they have to pay Brock Purdy. And some tough decisions are going to have to be made once they do that. And San Francisco, it's reasonable to say, will not be as good moving forward once they pay Brock Purdy. I'm talking from a roster perspective. Now, what San Francisco will ultimately bank on is that the development they have put in with Brock Purdy will pay off and he'll be able to stand on his own a little bit more. But from a roster perspective, the San Francisco 49ers will be no more talented than they are in this moment in time. So therefore, their Super Bowl chances won't be as good moving forward as they are for this year. But it does seem like San Francisco was legitimately willing to let him walk away. But I always thought he'd be in San Francisco. But the idea that he's going to sign a 4-year extension, this is not even where Brandon Ayuk's going to play the next year. It's the next 4. He signs a 4-year extension. What was this all for? And then San Francisco, which, by the way, tossing Brandon Ayuk under the bus, says, oh, we've had this on the table for multiple weeks now. We've wanted to sign him to this. Now, they didn't say it themselves. They do what so many NFL teams and leak it to Adam Schefter. But where do you think that's coming from? It's coming from the 49ers, who took a lot of flack for this whole thing, who got frustrated. And you heard John Lynch the other day talk about at some point you just got to play. They were kind of fed up with Brandon Ayuk. Not fed up to the point that they would lose him because, again, the situation I just outlined. But, like, fed up with, trying to protect him and no. You dragged it out. We had this deal on the table, and you still dragged it out because you didn't want to go to training camp. Like, that's what it ultimately looks like. That the 49ers did not want to let Brandon Ayuk go and were willing to give him the contract, a significant contract, and all Brandon Ayuk wanted to do was skip training camp. Feels like a waste of time, all of this. And if you know a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, please check on them because this is tough. And just a couple of days after Mike Tomlin named Russell Wilson the starter, they're going through it. Reach out, let them know that you are there for them. But here's an interesting wrinkle when it comes to the Brandon Ayuk saga. Diana Rossini is reporting that there was a deal that the Denver Broncos were a part of. Not the way I would like them to be involved, which is acquiring Brandon Ayuk, but they would essentially be facilitating a deal to get Brandon Ayuk to Pittsburgh. Because in her words, not her words, but her tweet, San Francisco wanted a top flight receiver, which unless Pittsburgh is willing to part with George Pickens, which would be like, what are you doing this for? Just keep George Pickens right? They wanted a top flight receiver to essentially replace Brandon Ayuk, and they wanted to do a 3-team deal where they would give up a 3rd-round pick and acquire Cortland Sutton from the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos were unwilling to do that. Couple things. Do you recall? Because sometimes it's really worth tracing it back and saying, where is this coming from? Like the Brandon Ayuk extension has been on the table for a couple of weeks. Who is giving that information to Adam Schefter? And I feel the same way here with Diana Rossini's tweet. Who's her source on this? Let me think. So in her tweet, it's the Broncos that are turning down the 3-team deal and characterizing San Francisco wanting a top flight receiver, and that being Cortland Sutton. Do I need to remind you who Diana Rossini just had on her podcast about a week or so ago? This reeks of Sean Payton. Oh, it reeks of Sean Payton because Cortland Sutton is not a top flight receiver. Cortland Sutton is not an even swap for Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is better. And Brandon Ayuk may not even be, I mean, it depends on how big the flight is. Right? But let's just take it this way. Brandon Ayuk is a better wide receiver than Cortland Sutton. Are they both in the same team? Maybe. But this has Sean Payton's fingerprints all over it. Who would want the information out there that the Broncos denied the trade? Denver would. Why would they want to do that? I don't know. Maybe in case they wanted to trade Cortland Sutton and say, we're not willing to give up on him for a third-round pick. Could be that. Could be just something as simple as the Broncos are not going to be anybody's facilitator. I remember, now it didn't work out ultimately, but remember the 3-team deal that the Nuggets helped facilitate to get Dwight Howard to LA. Right? It didn't end up working out because this is the Kobe Nash Dwight Howard Lakers, not the LeBron AD Dwight Howard Lakers. The Nuggets were in there facilitating the deal. And I remember at the time being very frustrated with that for this exact reason. Why are you allowing the Lakers to build a super team? And you're getting what, Andre Iguodala out of it? You're facilitating a Lakers super team. I didn't like that. So if the reason is the Broncos trying to put out that, hey, don't rope us in and think we're going to get the lesser of the deal and we're going to help facilitate all this stuff so the better teams in the NFL can get better, I actually fully support that. I do. So if that's the reason why the Broncos nixed the deal, good on Sean Payton. And if you're a Broncos fan, you should take some pride in that. But the top flight receiver thing, coupled with the fact that it's Denver who nixed the deal, tells me this is coming straight from Sean. But alas, like this whole Brandon Ayuk thing, complete waste of our time. The hope that Pittsburgh Steelers fans had only to be dashed. The anxiety that 49ers fans felt for not. The minutes that were dedicated on Sports Talk Radio to will Brandon Ayuk play for the 49ers again? Not only is he playing for them this year, he's playing for them for the next 3 after that. With the deal that the 49ers had offered him weeks ago. It's a waste. But it does, there is more of a 49ers angle to this. Here, this is where my surprise is. I thought that the 49ers were trying to get Brandon Ayuk to stay for 1 year and then saying, thanks for the memories, go on out in free agency. Now, this changes the calculus a lot for the San Francisco 49ers. Are they going to now I just don't see a path forward for Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk to remain on the San Francisco 49ers when Brock Purdy cashes in. I just don't see it. Like, we see teams manipulate the cap, but we're talking about a 49ers team with some of the most elite talent at multiple positions. when people say, well, you can't afford everybody. Some teams make it work because they don't have that many elite players that they have to pay top of market. San Francisco kind of does. So they can't pay everybody. The idea that Kansas City or Baltimore or Buffalo, like these teams that do have holes on their roster, they can afford to pay everybody of note. The best roster in the NFL gets very expensive. So now you're looking at it and you're saying Debo might be on the way out. Not this year because the 49ers are all in on this year. Like not Cowboys all in, but like legitimately all in. But I think Debo Samuel's days in San Francisco are coming to an end. And if you really think about it, losing Brandon Ayuk for nothing after this season is over and at least getting back a mid-round pick for Debo Samuel this offseason, given Debo's age, given his durability concerns with what San Francisco asks him to do, there's no doubt that if Debo Samuel is healthy, that he's more important to the 49ers than Brandon Ayuk. But this is a futures bet. Brandon Ayuk's going to have a lot of good years in front of him. I don't know how many more Debo has. So it kind of changes that perspective from the 49ers. Either way, this has a last dance type feel to it when it comes to the 49ers. Feels like a little Buffalo Bills like last year, where it's like, if they don't win it this year, win. Take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, gave you what you loved about last night if you're a Buffs fan, and that being the play of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. But coming up next, if you are a hater or you are just a critic of the Colorado Buffaloes, you got out of last night what you wanted to, too. And that's what we're going to discuss here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you on this Friday. Week 1 in college football gets going in earnest tomorrow. Couple of games last night, couple tonight, some tomorrow, some Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to interact with the show. And speaking of week 1 of the college football season, that would include Air Force tomorrow against Merrimack. And I have another chance for you to win 4 tickets to tomorrow's game coming up in just a little bit. I want to take care of this, and I love that you guys are paying attention. Got a text in about the book author I mentioned earlier in the week that I was going to have on, Armin Katayan. Armin hit me up earlier today and said that he is going to be unable to join me on the show today, but he will join me next week. The book that he has co-authored is called The Price. It is about this new college football landscape, NIL, the transfer portal. Very good. I'll have it done this weekend. One of the few times that I will not have a book done before I have the author on, but today, if Armin were to join me today, there would be a last little bit, but probably works out. I finish the book and maybe think of a couple other questions to ask Armin coming up next week. So Armin was very apologetic and said something came up, but he'll join me next week. Let's talk about the Buffs. This was the perfect game. If you are a Buffs fan, if you are a Buffs critic, you have all the ammunition you need. And if I'm going to be really honest about it, I think that the detractors have a little bit more. But look, Shedeur and Travis are going to get a lot of wins for Colorado. Now, a lot is relative. I think they'll get more CU more wins than they had last year. That's how I'll phrase it. But in many ways, and this is why maybe if you're a detractor of the Colorado Buffaloes, that you feel a little bit more vindicated after last night than maybe those who think that the Buffs are going to have a very good to great season feel today. It was kind of like same. Right? I mean, in many ways, Shedeur and Travis were the same brilliant, arguably best 2 players in college football. And then all that other stuff last year that cost them games. It was all back last night. I watched, as probably you did, the Colorado Buffaloes. Did they run the ball once before they punted that ball away at the end of the game? Did they run it once? A swing pass out to a wide receiver is not a run. They didn't run the ball once on that final drive, did they? And it's a normal thing to do. You're up, time's running out. You want to keep the clock moving. And the Buffs or Shador's dropping back and throwing not screen passes, swing routes to the wide receiver. He's going over the top, which I don't hate. I appreciate when teams kind of go for the death blow, so to speak. But even Dion after the game was like, I didn't want Shador to throw it down the field. So where was the run game? Why were they passing the ball when the best thing they could do is keep the ball on the ground, keep the clock running, and don't give North Dakota State the ball back?
You got to take what people give you. You can't take what you want, and it's not there. I mean, what is it? What did he throw for? 445 yards? You think we upset?
Right.
Who upset? So, they didn't have a running game. Well, the passing game looked pretty darn good today. So let's be appreciative and thankful that we got one of the premier guys in college football spinning it. We're going to run the ball. We're going to do that. We're going to have a lot more balance. Today was just that type of day. You got to take what they give you.
This is where Deion Sanders goes into salesman mode. Because I would counter with, sometimes you need to impose your will on the game. Taking what they give you is like quarters 1 through 3. Late in the game, if you have the lead, you got to run the football. Okay? And look, give credit to North Dakota State. Right? There were 2 teams on that field last night, but at some point, especially a team that thinks as highly of themselves as Colorado does, sometimes you just got to say, you know what? This is what the situation calls for. We're going to do it, and we dare you to stop us. Jordan Seaton, Tyler Brown, Hank Zelinkas. This is supposed to be a vastly improved offensive line, not a slight upgrade. This is supposed to be a significant upgraded offensive line. And they're calling pass plays because they don't trust their running game. That's what it is. Yes, you can give credit to North Dakota State while acknowledging that the Colorado Buffaloes did not trust their run game in a moment that absolutely called for it. For the game, they had 40-something yards? The improved offensive line is not just supposed to be so Shador has more time to throw. They're also supposed to be able to be road graders and run the football. Last night wasn't just okay. From a run game perspective, it was bad. And I don't expect Deion Sanders to be saying the sky is falling, but this is kind of what he said last year. Because he was asked about the lack of a run game early on last year. And I believe he kind of gave the same answer. We need to be more balanced. We're going to be more balanced. We have talented backs, and it never happened. Just at no point during the season did the Colorado Buffaloes legitimately get a run game established. So, yeah, it's a little concerning that they weren't able to run the football against North Dakota State, especially in that time. Throughout the game, I can buy Deion Sanders' argument here of the way Shador was throwing it, keep on with that. And he was, other than a ball that bounced off of a guy's calf, pretty unstoppable. I get that. But the situation called for you to pound the rock, and you didn't trust your team to be able to do that. And it very nearly cost you. Yes, it would have been fluky if North Dakota State would have ended up in the end zone in that last second heave. Okay, but it shouldn't have even come to that. And here the Buffaloes are throw. That's the most concerning thing about the Colorado Buffaloes. Another part of it is, defense doesn't look much better. Right? You did not get the performances really from the people you wanted the performances from. Right? The offensive and defensive line. North Dakota State chewed up the clock throughout the game. They moved the ball, sometimes at will. And when CU would actually stop them, penalty. The hit Shiloh Sanders had on the receiver, like that's completely unnecessary and gets Shiloh Sanders the reputation that he has around college football. That was an unnecessary shot that Shiloh felt he should take, and it cost CU. It extended a drive. That happened, I think, not the Shiloh hit, but 3 times CU in the first half had penalties on third down that would have gotten them off the field had they not committed that penalty. In many ways last night, it was the same old Buffaloes. I'm not entirely surprised because I said last night had to be a Shedeur Sanders game, and I do think I have more confidence in this group that they'll be able to figure some of this out as they go along. I understand offensive lines do need some time. So I believe this group has a chance to be better. So maybe in some small way, I agree with Deion Sanders, but that doesn't make tonight or last night any less troubling because you didn't see it. Maybe you have confidence that you will, but every week that goes by, they draw closer to that conference schedule. They're going into Lincoln. Then they got CSU. It was, in many ways, the same team you saw last year. And that's why I think if you're a detractor or a critic or a downright hater when it comes to Colorado, I think that you saw what you needed to see. And it's something that Deion Sanders just can't speak into existence. And sometimes you have to force the issue in a situation that absolutely calls for it. North Dakota State is a very good FCS team, but at the end of the day, they are still an FCS team. Run the football. And this is a team that had issues doing that last year. 719-247-1313. What are you focused on? Shedeur and Travis, and you're wowed today, or were you focused on the other stuff that makes you feel like maybe the Buffaloes aren't as improved as we have been led to believe? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, another chance for you to win tickets to see Air Force take on Merrimack in the season opener tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, Air Force kicks off the 2024 football season against Merrimack, and I'm always interested in Air Force's football season, as you are, but this year there's a little bit more intrigue surrounding this opening game, and joining me to preview it and the season is the man who will be on the call alongside Jesse Kurtz tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 on 740 KVOR. He is the voice of the Falcons, Jim Arthur. Jim, thanks for the time today, sir.
Ryan, you're welcome. And everybody, I think, is glad that football season is finally here. And August went a little slow, but everybody's good to go and ready to get some football here.
This has been my question of the week, whether it's to Brent Brigham, to Troy Calhoun, and I will pose it to you. What do you know about this team? Unequivocally, what do you know about this team going into the season, if anything?
Well, I don't know anything about this team. And I talked to Troy Calhoun Wednesday night, and he even admitted, he's not sure what to expect. This team has not, stamped itself and given itself an identity just yet. We don't know who the alpha dog is. Is it the offense? Is it the defense? I don't think anybody knows. What I do know is you've got a team that, is very young, obviously. All these guys for the last couple of years have been playing behind fellas who in some cases are in the NFL right now. They've been playing behind guys who in the last 4 full seasons have averaged 10 wins a season. So it does tell you how talented the previous couple of years' teams is, certainly. But yeah, there's still a big question mark as to what this team can do, who they're going to be, what their identity is going to be. It's a great question, and we're not going to find out necessarily tomorrow or even the week after or even the week after. I think it's going to take a while to really determine who the Falcons are this year.
But the upside of this, and I do think, and Coach Calhoun better than I do, I feel like this program takes immense pride in their ability to continue to develop these players and as men and cadets and all that kind of stuff. And Troy Calhoun talks about that a lot. But the upside of this season is what an unbelievable sign this would be about what this football program is if they can turn over so much of the roster and be able to maintain what they've done, bowl games, 8, 9, 10 wins with such a different looking roster.
Well, and I agree. And if that's the case, if they can do that, I think that goes back to the culture that they've really established there under Troy Calhoun. It's his 18th season. And it really is, although he was hesitant to agree with me when I brought that up the other night. But look, this is a winning program. It's like when you go play basketball, let's say at Duke in North Carolina, you walk into a winning culture. You walk into a program where the teams are used to winning. And you've got the same thing here at the Air Force Academy, particularly the last 4 years. When you look at who they've beaten and how they've won games and how they've competed, it is a winning culture. And this is the next group in that winning culture that understands they've got to maintain and they've got to, lead the way and make sure that that culture is intact to the best of their abilities.
Jim Arthur, voice of the Air Force Falcons, joining us here on Drive Time Sports. Falcons kick off the season tomorrow against Merrimack. Give us the scouting report on John Boucher.
Well, that's an interesting question. And I say that because we saw just a little bit of him last year in not even a mop-up role. At one point last year, Air Force used 4 quarterbacks, if you remember. And they brought John on late in the year to try to give them a little bit of a spark, try to give them something different. John Boucher's got a great arm. I mean, right off the bat, the first thing you notice about him, he has an outstanding arm. He can really throw the football and throw the football well. That being said, He's here to run the option. He's here to manage the offense. I think everybody is kind of wondering what kind of rusher he will be and what kind of chances Air Force will give him to be that running quarterback, because Air Force is very, very young behind him. Keep in mind, when you look at their depth, they've got sophomores playing behind him. So I don't know if with Boucher, how much you see of him tomorrow running the football. I'm sure you'll see him do it a little bit, but I think the scouting report, still a big mystery. Can he manage the offense? Can he become the type of runner who you have to respect if you're the defense? You know what you're going to get from fullback. You know what the tailbacks can give you in this offense. But what does the quarterback give you? And how much will they allow the quarterback to give you, given the fact that everybody is so new and has limited snaps under their belts?
Has it been your experience that not even necessarily a roster that looks as different as Air Force's, but just calling games for as long as you have you noticed that early on in the season, the defense is a little bit of ahead of the offense? And could that be a reasonable expectation for tomorrow in San Jose State, that the defense may look like they got a little bit more figured out perhaps than the offense will early?
Normally you would say that. I don't know if you say that necessarily this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because how young the defense is. You look at the secondary, they do have a lot of experience, but you're going to have pretty much all new linebackers. You have a couple of fellows who played a little bit up front on the defensive line, and you tend to lean on your defense early on in football seasons because the offense is a little more complicated, honestly. Is that the case here? Could be. I don't know if you would absolutely say that it is, just because, again, it's a team with a lot of young guys. Osaro Aihi is going to be one of the starting inside linebackers. We've called his name, but only on special teams, as an example. There's another guy who plays linebacker for Air Force. He is number 44, Grant Ewell. He's a senior out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We called his name maybe 5-7 times last year. He's a senior. And yet here he is, and he's got so limited snaps, and he's played in very few games. I don't know. I mean, it could turn out that way, certainly, but normally you would say that's the case. The defense ahead of the offense, and you lean on them so the offense, gets their feet underneath them. With this team this year, they're so young. I don't know if you necessarily say that with a lot of certainty.
Jim Arthur, my guest, given what you said about the secondary, if you're just in your own head predicting what you think you're going to see throughout the season, do you think that not just because of the experience, but the talent that is in the secondary, do you think that we could look back at the end of the season and say that the secondary of Air Force was maybe their biggest strength?
It is going in on paper. Nobody wins games, however, on paper. There's experience back there. There's talent back there. Certainly, those guys have seen a lot more of the field besides kickoff return coverage and punt return coverage. Are you going to have to count on those guys a little bit? I think so. Have they tried to use those fellas to kind of help the defense as best they can? I think they have. I know they have, as a matter of fact. But again, there's so much unknown about this team and what they're going to be able to do in certain situations. You've got outstanding talent back there, without a doubt. What do they turn that talent into? What does that allow them to do with Jamari Bellamy at one defensive back and Trey Williams and the safeties with Casey Beard and Levi Brown and Camby Goff, who's coming back from an ACL. He's an immensely talented player. He's got a lot of snaps, but he got hurt last year, game one, with an Achilles tendon. And he's back in what capacity? Limited right now, I will tell you that. So I don't know. I mean, and again, every time you hate to keep saying, I don't know, but that's how young this football team is at every position. and collectively as a unit. You haven't had to say that the last 4 years with these squads because you've had the previous year to kind of fall back on. This squad doesn't have that.
How many times have you called James Tomase's name leading up to this season? Because it looks like he may get a bulk of the reps tomorrow with Peyton Zadroik dealing with some injury. Is that a player that you've seen quite a bit of, or what has been your, because that could be something that continues past the Merrimack game. What can you tell us about him?
Well, it will continue past the Merrimack game. I will grant you that.
Yeah.
And we could talk about that if you want. But James Tomase is a guy, he's a senior. He did play some last year, and he played well down the stretch. He got a lot of reps probably in the last 3-4 games, and we did call his name quite often. He had a good last third of the year. There's no doubt about that. Another guy, Aiden Swartz, who's a junior, he played and will be starting. He played down the stretch last year, and he did some good things. And again, some of these names you do recognize. Now, with Peyton Zadroik, you're saying to yourself, wow, this guy's an all-conference performer. What's going on with him? Couple of things. He got a medical turnback. And because of that, he wasn't allowed to be at the academy and in school until the day school started. So he was unable to show up 3 weeks, 4 weeks before and work out on his own and unofficially with the team. He had to start doing that the first day of school. He's coming back from a leg injury. I think they want to kind of nurse him along, and they want to use him, I think, maybe this year is more of a specialty guy because he's that good, but at the same time, coming back from an injury, there's a reputation out there. I think they want to be kind of judicious as to how they use him early on.
As you look at this Merrimack team, and we know why a team like Merrimack is scheduled and teams throughout college football do this. If there is something that is concerning, if you're an Air Force fan going into tomorrow, what about Merrimack would fit that bill?
That is actually an easier question to answer than all the other questions you just asked about a team that we should know. And what's concerning is number 0 for Merrimack, the wide receiver and kick returner, Donovan Wadley. He's 5'9", he's 180, he's out of New Jersey, and this guy is a bona fide star. He's on the Walter Payton watch list at the FCS level, which is their version of the Heisman Trophy. He's a wide receiver. He can run the ball. He is a dangerous, dangerous kick returner. He returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns last year. He averaged 37 yards a kickoff return. And what was amazing to me, when you look at his total yardage, he's got over 1,300 yards of total offense, and that's catching, running, and returning kicks. Just about half of that is returning kicks, and that kind of blew my mind. He had 17 kickoff returns, but he averaged 37 yards a return. And they're going to try to turn him loose a little bit more. I think they're going to try to feature him a little bit more. I mean, he's an outstanding talent. And they use the word dynamic to talk about him. He's gotten everybody's attention this week. And that's one of the things that, if I'm Air Force, that concerns me. The second thing is they've got 9 starters back on defense. And this is a defense that was very, very good last year. They were in the top 5 in the nation in some defensive categories against the run, and they've got 9 guys back. So they have the edge, certainly in experience. Now, yeah, they're coming from the FCS level, but you saw North Dakota State at the FCS level last night and what they did against CU. They wound up, finishing the game at the Buffs 3-yard line. So this could be a little more of a dangerous game than anticipated, and especially because of the youth of the Falcons.
Bigger picture, there's so much new about Air Force. We talked about that, but there's so much new about the Mountain West. As you look at this schedule, it doesn't have to be a Mountain West game, but as you kind of look through the schedule, whether it's for travel planning purposes or what have you, what game do you kind of look at as either the most interesting game on Air Force's schedule, taking away the service academies, obviously, but the most interesting game or a game that you feel is pivotal, at least on paper going into it, that you say this could be one of those games that could tell us a lot about what this Air Force team can do this season?
The game that stands out to me early is on September 28th when Air Force plays at Wyoming. Wyoming's a good football team. All right. They have a new head coach. Craig Bohl's son is the head coach. And I think he's a little more forward thinking when it comes to offense. Offense was not one of Craig Bohl's strengths over the last number of years. I think his son's philosophy, they're going to do a little more offensively. They've got a lot of talent on both sides of the football. They're deep at running back. They're outstanding on the defensive line. I mean, Wyoming's got a lot. And I think that game for Air Force, big game, it's up in Laramie. And I think early on, and the Falcons will be coming off a bye, as a matter of fact, that game early on, I think, will tell you a little bit of where maybe Air Force is when you measure them against a veteran team that I think has a great chance of winning the conference. That's the Wyoming Cowboys. So that's a game for me that really stands out right away.
Yeah, and weird things tend to happen when the Falcons go up to Laramie a few weeks before that, all starting with Merrimack tomorrow. Obviously, Jim and I both encourage you to go out to the game, but that doesn't mean that you can't also listen to Jim and Jesse, so you can bring your radios out, or if you're there's no way you can make it to Falcon Stadium, you can hear Jim and Jesse at 1:30 on 740 KVOR. Jim, appreciate it, my friend. Have a great call tomorrow.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. And beautiful weather this weekend. Hope you come on out and watch the Falcons.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. That is Jim Arthur, voice of the Air Force Falcons. Meant to ask him how many years he's been doing this, but just nobody can make heads or tails of this team. I think, and I said this earlier in the week when I was doing best and worst case scenario this season for Air Force. I think you trust this program, to Jim's point, enough to say the bottom's not going to completely fall out if health is reasonable. Right? And we saw the injuries got a little bit out of control last year around that Hawaii game. Obviously, losing Zach Larrier was kind of the catalyst for the downfall of the Falcons, coupled, of course, with what Army did to them at Empower Field. But if Air Force could stay relatively healthy, I think there's a reasonably high floor that is certainly below what they've been the last few years, but it's not the bottom falling out. I don't believe this program this year is going to have the bottom fall out. But you've grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle if you're a Falcons fan. And it's being in the Mountain West conversation. It's bowl games. It's, going to those bowl games and beating Power 5 teams. It's 9 wins. It's 10 wins. It's not just, 6. And because of the military aspect, they get a decent bowl game. Like, they get 9, 10 wins and they earn their way into as significant a bowl game as they can. That's what you've grown accustomed to. I don't know if this team is going to reach that. I think that's best case scenario. They might be a step below that. which is still, given the turnover, a really good season. Really good. But you just can't. You think you know. It's like, perfect example is Peyton Zadroik. Right? Jim and I talked about Peyton Zadroik. That's one of the few guys they bring back that you know, if you're a Falcons fan, or at least I would say more of a casual fan. If you really dig into the too deep and everything, you know more of these names that will be out there tomorrow. But Zadroik is a name that should register to Falcon fans of all levels. And you're not going to see a ton of them over the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season. A lot of unknown. And that's why I think tomorrow, even though I don't know if I share in the level of worry that maybe a Troy Calhoun does, but that's the nature of coaches. I do think there's a lot in tomorrow, though, to find out, okay, this is what they can be. And to just learn about some of these players. So an interesting one tomorrow. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just giving you my legitimate interest in tomorrow. In years past, I'll level with you. Robert Morris, some of these other openers, I'm like, okay, I'm just glad Air Force football is back. Let's fast forward to week 2. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you could do that. You want to see how this team looks against Merrimack, knowing that the road only gets tougher. If you'd like to go to the game, I have 4 tickets for you. Be the 13th texter to text Falcons in your name to 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after weather and traffic. Tomorrow night, Ludacris hitting the stage alongside Mike Jones at the Southwest Motors Event Center. Get your tickets and plan your entire visit to the Colorado State Fair at coloradostatefair.com. Congrats to Ralph, won the latest 4-pack of tickets to Air Force tomorrow. And I have one more 4-pack that I will give away next hour if you are interested. We'll get back to the Buffaloes at the top of the hour. Just talked Falcons with Jim Arthur. CSU's got quite the game lined up this weekend as well. Week 1 is interesting for Colorado teams in different ways, I think. And comparing it to last night, I would say there's no, and I know what a certain now notorious Denver Post columnist wrote the other day. I don't think CSU must beat Texas. I understand the logic that Sean Keeler had where he said, if you want these big conferences to notice you and to take you in the next time the tectonic plates shift in college football, yeah, beating Texas would go a long way. I don't go into tomorrow with CSU and Texas and say, I think the Rams can show the progress they're making under Jay Norvell and their viability as the next group of 5 team to get poached by just hanging with Texas. I think tomorrow is, for the Rams, look like you belong on the same field. Right? There was a lot of talk, and, the school in Boulder is the one that everyone thinks talks a lot. CSU talked a lot. They just weren't, maybe the way they went about it was not as in your face as CU was. But they paraded around the idea that K-State tried to poach their quarterback and wide receiver. I mean, just wore it like a badge of honor, used it to try and say, like, hey, look at what we got going on at CSU. These Power 5 teams, they want our guys. And they don't want to go. They love it so much. What happened with Kansas State? Not so much with Horton, because you already know and believe that this guy, he's legit. He could play for a lot of teams. He could be featured for a lot of teams that will be in the college football playoff. Like, Torrey Horton's been that guy. Braden Fowler Nicolosi, not quite yet. But CSU could not wait to parade and shout it from the mountaintops that Kansas State tried to poach their guys, and they decided to stay. As well they should, by the way. I don't begrudge them one bit. But my reaction to that was, look, there's some stupid money being thrown around. Some stupid money. Right? And it's like when we talk about these NFL quarterbacks and how much they're getting paid, and you're like, that guy's not worth that. Well, when you have stupid money to throw around, you can inflate, you could add a few more dollars to the total. That's what I feel like. the fact that Kansas State wanted Nicolosi, that speaks highly of his talent. For sure. But throwing out the dollar amount, it could be just because they can. Well, I've heard some dollar figures for some athletes that you would be absolutely shocked that a player of a certain caliber is getting paid what they're getting paid after transferring. Like in basketball, bench guys. So I don't pay attention to the dollar amount. I pay more attention to the fact that this is a Power 5 team. This is a team that has a desire to compete and an expectation to compete for the Big 12 title. It is a badge of honor for Jay Norvell in this program. But I would slow the roll. Like, he's the second best quarterback in the state. But that doesn't mean that they can't put a scare into Texas, that they can't look like they belong. And I think that's kind of my expectation. Just don't get your doors blown off. Right? Don't get embarrassed. It's kind of like the CU-TCU game last year. Like, I don't have high expectations, but gosh, if you could go in there and look like you deserve to be there, that you're not, the little sisters of the poor that Texas has decided to schedule just so they could destroy you, I think that would be a win for CSU. And then if you're a Rams fan, you couple that with some of what you saw in the CU game from your arch rival. I think that's probably the best case scenario for the weekend for CSU. Don't get your doors blown off. Look like you belong. Showcase your wide receiver quarterback duo. If this is the best wide receiver quarterback duo in the Mountain West, then CSU should be a legitimate threat to go to the Mountain West title game. So show a little bit of that. Show that you belong on the same field as Texas for a little while. Don't get embarrassed. And this would be a pretty good weekend to be a CSU Ram. And then the real business for Jay Norvell and company begins after the Texas game. The spread for that one is Texas minus 32.5. So cover. That's it. That's essentially what I'm saying. Now, they don't go in with that purpose because, betting college athletic, cover. If CSU can cover, right? What's that old saying? Good teams win, great teams cover. Rams, cover. And that would energize the fan base. Texas minus 32.5. I think they might be able to do it. I think they got a shot. Seven 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the three stories that are driving the show. CU, Brandon Ayuk. Caitlin versus Angel for the last time during the regular season, and a very special anniversary to one Denver Nuggets player. It's all next here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on this Friday before Labor Day. Wait for it. Hopefully you're well on your way to a holiday weekend, and I appreciate you listening, whether it's on your radio, online, through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, or if you're watching on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Live stream the show each and every day. If you want to throw out a sports take before you get into holiday mode, feel free to do so. 719-247-1313 is the number to call or text. I will also be giving away 4 tickets to see Air Force take on Merrimack tomorrow at Falcon Stadium to add to your holiday plans. And that number is how you enter our contest. So keep it handy. In the meantime, here are the 3 stories that are driving the show. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to get a couple of stories out of last night's game. Here's story number 1.
You ever felt like you won, but you didn't win? It's almost like we had more points than they did. Giving up the last touchdown on the run, that bothered me because we pride ourselves on going to get the quarterback, and we have a multitude of young men that can go get the quarterback, and we didn't get that done. But I'm thankful. I'm happy we got the W. Miss Peggy's one step closer to the dream and the vision that we have for her, as well as I think 31 NFL scouts are on hand tonight, and I think they saw what they came to see.
That was Deion Sanders after the Colorado Buffaloes beat North Dakota State. By the way, the prime effect still very much a thing. The most watched Thursday opener for ESPN ever. 4.8 million people tuned in last night. And essentially what they got, and here's where there's 2 stories within one. They basically saw last year's Buffaloes. And that's good and that's bad. Let's start with the good. Travis Hunter is absolutely insane. And he is the most talented player in college football. 3 touchdowns. The catch that ultimately made the difference in the game for CU, what is going to hold up as one of the best catches, if not the best catch of the year in college football. He continues to be an absolute freak of nature. And with those 31 NFL scouts, you wonder what they view him as. And I think it's a defensive back. I like to think it's a defensive back because that's how I view Travis Hunter. You'd be silly not to utilize his motor, his stamina, his skill on both sides of the football. But where I can see Travis Hunter being elite is at the cornerback position. With wide receiver, he could be very talented, but he's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. I would think that teams would want to utilize him more as a defensive back, especially early on in his career. And hey, if you can use him in some packages offensively, do that. And see if he can handle it. I think he has a legitimate chance to become the Shohei Ohtani of football. To be able to do both at a high level. But I think the team that drafts him will have to be respectful of his learning curve. He is going to be a young player. He's not the finished product that Shohei Ohtani was when the Angels brought him over. I think you have to be careful. I think you have to be intentional. I think you have to look out for what's best for Travis. If you overwhelm him by depending on him heavily on both sides of the football, you have the chance to not maximize his talents on either side of the football. I'd lean defensive back and try to, as time goes on, utilize his ability on the offensive side. But that's for down the road. Right now, he's playing every snap but 2. I believe one of the snaps that he missed was because his helmet came off. That guy, as Mark Johnson put it on one of his touchdown calls, is an alien. And the most unique player, most talented player we have in college football. And the QB throwing him the ball isn't too shabby either. Shedeur Sanders did what I asked of him and did what I expected him to do, which was jumpstart his Heisman campaign. He was brilliant last night. And while the offensive line was not great, I did see some decision making. That 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, which had less than 2 minutes in it, but that sequence was okay. Shedeur, the timer does go off quicker. Right? And that's kind of my big question with him is, was it all the offensive line, or is there a little bit of a tendency for the timer to not go off quickly enough, or for him to hold on for the spectacular? And there was a lot of spectacular. But I think he did show that he could be decisive with the football and not take those ridiculous 20-yard losses on his sacks. So very impressed with Travis, very impressed with Shedeur. And you got that with last year's Buffs. Here's the other half of it. That will be story number 2.
You got to take what people give you. You can't take what you want, and it's not there. I mean, what is it? What did he throw for? 445 yards? You think we upset?
Right.
Who upset? So, they didn't have a running game. Well, the passing game looked pretty darn good today. So let's be appreciative and thankful that we got one of the premier guys in college football spinning it. We're going to run the ball. We're going to do that. We're going to have a lot more balance. Today was just that type of day. You got to take what they give you.
I've heard that before. The concerning aspect of last night's game was the run game more than anything else. I thought, the defense didn't look greatly improved, but the lack of a run game behind this offensive line, with how good they're supposed to be, it's a bit troubling if you're a Buffaloes fan, especially in the time of the game that Deion Sanders was being asked about. It is inexcusable and cannot happen that late in the game, when it is obvious that you need to run the football, that you don't trust your run game enough, and you're going to throw swing passes to wide receivers. That's going to be your run game in the 4-minute offense. That's not going to work. And I hear what Deion Sanders is saying. Sometimes you have to impose your will on the game. That was not taking what the defense was giving them. That was not trusting your ability to run the football when you should be able to. If I get through 3 quarters, it's a little bit different. But at that juncture of the game, you run the football. I'm sorry. And the fact that Deion Sanders did not trust his team to be able to run out the rest of the clock is concerning, is something that they're going to have to immediately show improvement in next week against Nebraska. Because I don't care how much more improved the offensive line is. If CU can't threaten in the run game, teams will pin their ears back and they will go after Shedeur. You have to have that balance. And I heard it last year multiple times from Deion Sanders, how talented his backs are, how they want to run the football, how they're going to run the football. And it rarely happened. It would be there for a game and it would go away the next game. You have to consistently be able to run the football. If this team is going to get where they want to go, they got to run the football. It can't all be Shedeur. And that's what I'm saying. Last night, you basically got, if you were not paying attention, you would swear that this was 2023. It looked very similar. Travis and Shedeur, amazing, the best players on the field. but CU unable to do a lot of other things. And that's why I think that if you are a detractor of the Colorado Buffaloes football program, you have a bit more to go on last night than maybe the people who think that CU is going to contend for a spot in the college football playoff. Here's story number 3. Oh, I don't have the audio for that. It's okay, because there's not really any audio that accompanies this other than me saying that Brandon Ayuk agreeing to that 4-year, $120 million extension with San Francisco. You probably already knew that. But a wrinkle in this whole Brandon Ayuk saga is what you may not know. Diana Rossini of The Athletic reporting that there was a proposed 3-team deal on the table that would get Brandon Ayuk to Pittsburgh. But the Denver Broncos killed it. And the idea for San Francisco was, we'll give up Brandon Ayuk and we'll give up a 3rd-round pick. And we'll get draft capital back from Pittsburgh, and we'll get Cortland Sutton from Denver. And in her tweet, San Francisco was determined to get a, quote, top flight receiver. And the Broncos were unwilling to do that deal, leaving Brandon Ayuk with little choice, but perhaps to sign the deal that was reportedly on the table for a couple weeks from the San Francisco 49ers. That tweet from Diana Rossini has Sean Payton's fingerprints all over it. Because, one, Cortland Sutton is not a top-flight receiver. Okay, he's not. It's not an even swap. Brandon Ayuk for Cortland Sutton. It's not. But with San Francisco, it would be a decent consolation prize. Right? The role that they would have for Cortland Sutton, obviously, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle would be targeted by Brock Purdy more than Cortland Sutton. It's an adequate replacement, but it is not even. And Cortland Sutton is not a top flight receiver. That wording feels like Sean Payton. Maybe to increase the trade value of Cortland Sutton down the road. Certainly, the fact that it leaked out that the Broncos killed this deal, to me, I got to believe is coming from Sean Payton. And that part of it I like. Cortland Sutton being top 5, no. But I like the idea that the Broncos killed this thing. Because that means they're not in the business of making anybody else better. They're looking out for themselves. And I brought this up earlier in the show. Way back, feels like forever ago. But the Denver Nuggets were the 3rd team. I hate being the 3rd team in a deal, the facilitator. It's such a, what do I want to say? Beta role to take. To be the facilitator. You know, you get the leftovers to help facilitate a deal. I don't like that. And the Nuggets did this many years ago when they facilitated Dwight Howard going to the Lakers. When it was Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, and then it was Dwight Howard. The Nuggets were that 3rd team. The Nuggets were the team that facilitated, and they got Andre Iguodala for it. And how did that turn out? If I'm a Broncos fan, I love the idea that Sean Payton killed this deal. Say, they may be purging the roster. They may be given, but it's going to be on their terms. They're not going to be this team that helps teams get better, especially Pittsburgh. Could you imagine if the Denver Broncos facilitated Brandon Ayuk going to Pittsburgh? So, bravo, Sean Payton. Kudos for killing this deal, but and this report just adds to week 2, right? Steelers, big mad. Could have had Brandon Ayuk if not for the Denver Broncos. Love that part of it. Don't love this idea that Cortland Sutton's a top flight receiver and would be basically an even swap for the 49ers to get rid of Brandon Ayuk. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, tonight will be the final regular season matchup between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And at long last, Caitlin Clark has the chance to put to rest one of the most insane, ridiculous, and unfounded arguments in the sports world right now. Air Force kicks off their 2024 football season at revamped Falcon Stadium. That's right. It's a upgraded experience at Thin Air. Tomorrow afternoon, 1:30. If you would like to go, I have 4 tickets for the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719-247-1313. Remember when J.J. Redick talked about engagement farming? This is what he's talking about. Coming up in about 10 minutes, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark will meet for the final time. Probably this season. Indiana's the 7th seed, Chicago's the 8th seed. It would be quite something if they ended up meeting in the postseason. And going into this final matchup, ESPN put out their rookie ladder and still has Angel Reese above Caitlin Clark in the WNBA Rookie of the Year. They have tried so hard to make this a thing, and it's just not. And it makes ESPN look unserious. And it's really, you know who it's unfair to? Even more than Caitlin Clark, to suggest that anybody is in her stratosphere when it comes to the Rookie of the Year. But it's unfair to Angel Reese. Because when you see that Angel Reese is listed above Caitlin Clark in ESPN's rankings of the top rookies, I can't help but look at what Angel Reese has done. And of course, people will point to the number of rebounds that she has had. And yes, she is very good at rebounding the basketball. You want to know Angel Reese's? This is what ESPN makes you do. Here are Angel Reese's shooting numbers from the games after the Olympic break. 3 of 10, 4 of 16, 3 of 12, 8 of 16, 4 of 13, 4 of 14. I'm not saying that I'm not accusing her of stat padding, but I'm saying I know where her rebounds come from. And I'm tired of that being thrown out as the be-all, end-all argument for Angel Reese to be the Rookie of the Year. It's preposterous. She has a bright future in the WNBA, and she is right there at the second tier of WNBA star. Right? She's near the top of that. She is a big name. She's going to be a box office draw. She's going to be a terrific player for a lot of years in the WNBA. But to suggest that what she is doing is more worthy of the Rookie of the Year than what Caitlin Clark is doing, it proves that all you're trying to do is start a conversation where there isn't one. Here's the better conversation. The way Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever are playing, how dangerous will they be in the WNBA playoffs? That's a legitimate question. That's a conversation worth having. The Rookie of the Year thing was done before the Olympic break. And all Clark has done is come out and went berserker. (19-5-5, 19-7-7, 23-5-8, 23-5-9, 25-5-10. On 8 of 16 shooting. On 6 of 14 shooting. We gotta stop. And what was one of the big one of the big arguments that somebody on ESPN made. Well, Angel Reese is affecting winning more, which, by the way, the next time that we ever look at the Rookie of the Year when it comes to how well their team did will be the first time. That is never a part of the conversation. And yet, in order to perpetuate it being part of to perpetuate this idea that it's an actual conversation on who should be the WNBA Rookie of the Year, and now they don't even have that anymore. Indiana's 7th, Chicago's 8th. Caitlin Clark has beaten Angel Reese. It's just not. And it makes things turn ugly. This is, you know what this is? This is the Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid thing all over again. It is. Both are outstanding players. Both are MVP eligible. One is deserving, one is not. One is the MVP, one isn't. Same thing with this Rookie of the Year. Angel Reese, in her own right, is a very good player. I like Angel Reese. I'm excited to see what she does for the rest of her career. And I legitimately hope that her touch around the rim gets better as her career goes on. But this thing is not a competition. It hasn't been. It won't be. And ESPN looks completely unserious that they continue to act like there's a legitimate argument for Angel Reese to be the Rookie of the Year over Caitlin Clark. And it's like, can we have a serious conversation about the WNBA, or do we just have to keep going back and forth about Angel Reese? Because I don't want to bring up the fact that it looks at times like she's, that the running a tip drill or that drill where you throw it off the backboard to the next player behind you. I don't want to do that. I don't want to diminish what Angel Reese is doing. But you're going to put her on the same level as Caitlin Clark and what she's doing. It's like, just watch the games. Watch tonight. The game starts. Hopefully you have an eye on. There's enough room for everybody in the WNBA, but it's okay that there's not a debate here. It's okay. You don't have to contort yourself into knots to make a case that Joel Embiid is better than Nikola Jokic. You don't have to do that. It's okay. You look silly when you do it. And it's the same thing when you try to argue that Angel Reese is the Rookie of the Year over Caitlin Clark. Just appreciate what each one of them are on their own and acknowledge that this thing has been over for a while. And just enjoy the matchup. Enjoy the rivalry. You don't need to add more to it. We all get it. We all know the history. You don't have to add more to it like somehow this will decide the Rookie of the Year. It won't. But that doesn't mean this game isn't fun. I got it on in studio right now. You don't have to make up stuff. Appreciate what each one of them are doing while understanding that one is head and shoulders above the other. 719-24-7 1313 Fever and Sky 7 seed versus the 8 seed. I mean, there's that too. right? Two teams battling for the playoffs. Like there's enough storylines. ESPN, engagement farming. I don't see eye to eye with JJ Redick on a lot. We see eye to eye on that. Take a break, come back, wrap up the week on Drive Time Sports after this. Congratulations to Amanda. She is the winner of the latest 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force take on Merrimack tomorrow. Reminder that you can hear the game on 740 KVOR at 1:30 if you cannot attend tomorrow's game. 9-8 Chicago has an early lead over Indiana. And Aaliyah Boston. No, she decided to pass it up. And now the Fever turn it over. Caitlin Clark did hit a deep three. And now Chicago hit a 3-pointer. So now they're up 12-8. I know we're going to go through this Broncos season and identify, the needs of this football team. It's going to be, I don't think that the Broncos would necessarily be in the Travis Hunter business. Not because, he's not a good player. He's an amazing player, but, weapons are a thing. But again, it's defensive back. So do you go? I know it's fun to think about Pat Surtain on one side and Travis Hunter on the other. I want to see the Broncos pass rush this year. If the Broncos can generate a pretty good pass rush, then okay. Then get in the Travis Hunter business. That would be, just in a vacuum, that would be amazing, right? Travis Hunter on the Denver Broncos. But I got to see this Broncos pass rush. And Jonah Ellis is who people are excited about. I don't know if the Broncos are going to be high enough in the draft, but look, the problem that you're going to run into this year, I do believe that the Broncos are better than Carolina, and I do believe they're better than New England. Those are two teams, at least New England, no way they take a quarterback. So I think it's going to be very difficult, even as few games as I think the Broncos are going to win. It's going to be very difficult to be in play for Travis Hunter. But look, if quarterbacks, go off the board 1, 2, 3, Broncos won't be too far behind that, I wouldn't think. We'll see. We'll identify the needs, but yeah, Travis Hunter with Sean Payton, that could be a lot of fun. But again, some patience needs to be exercised when it comes to Travis Hunter, to ask him to play both sides of the football. Like Sean Payton had Taysom Hill, and he didn't play him on both sides of the football. Now Dennis Allen is thinking about playing Taysom Hill on both sides of the football. How long did that take? And he's always had the ability to do that. Talk for years is that Taysom Hill can play both sides of the football. Why hasn't New Orleans done it? Because it's difficult enough to play on one side of the football. And again, Champ Bailey, Charles Woodson, Miles Jack, like these guys did not play much on both sides of the football. I think it would be a bit overwhelming for Travis Hunter to go to a team that wants him to do both and relies on him to do both. I think a pass rusher might be a bigger need for the Denver Broncos, But look, if you feel good about the pass rush, if clearing a path for, Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims and these younger guys to develop a little bit this year with no Tim Patrick or no Jerry Jeudy in the mix, maybe you could feel good enough about the wide receiver position that you go, all right, they don't have to thrust Travis Hunter into that role. Yeah, I could talk myself into Travis Hunter on the Broncos. But cornerback, first and foremost. And I just wonder if that's what the Broncos will need in the immediate future for Bo Nix. Be fun to bandy about, that's for sure. It doesn't, we're just getting started with the college football season, but outside of Travis Hunter, the guy that transferred to Ohio State, I'm blanking on his name, my apologies. But they have a big time player, and then it's really the quarterbacks. Not a lot of high-profile offensive linemen, not a lot of high-profile pass rushers at the current moment in time, but they always emerge, and some might show out this weekend. But the message today is don't get complacent about what Travis Hunter is doing. This is special. This is Ohtani stuff. I get it. Different sport, different level, but he's doing both at a high level. And he did it at a high level last year and has a chance to continue it this year. We grow too familiar with people doing special things in sports. Can't with Travis Hunter. Just too good. Too good. Shaq in attendance at the Fever and Sky game. I saw Army was playing. Army got, I guess it's not an early start. They might have been playing. Army up 21-7 on Lehigh. Oklahoma jumping out to a 14-0 lead over Temple. Michigan State, their new regime. And Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. They're up 2-0 on FAU. I had no idea. When did FAU become this landing spot for disgraced coaches? Not disgraced like scandal, but just like got canned. Tom Herman is now the head coach. And remember, that's where Lane Kiffin resumed his career. So that's the niche that FAU has carved out. So Tom Herman leading FAU, but they took a sack in the end zone. I think it was a sack anyway. 2-0 Michigan State. TCU Stanford, probably the most interesting game on the slate tonight, but it's not, we're, what Stanford it is, and we're pretty removed from TCU. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Georgia, Clemson. And then Miami and Florida. I think I like the Gators in that one. That game can be heard here on Extra Sports 1300, by the way, at 1 o'clock. We got LSU USC on Sunday. And then Texas CSU at 1:30. Air Force Merrimack at 1:30. College football, it's back. And the decisions on what game to watch are back, as difficult as they might be. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, the nightcap. How could that slip my mind? Because we got games every single day. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Lose track, but yeah, A&M and Notre Dame, the big one tomorrow night. So love it. And then guess what next week is? NFL, Chiefs, Ravens, Broncos, Seahawks. We made it. We finally made it. That'll be it for me today. I appreciate your patronage. A lot going on this weekend, as I mentioned, with college football, but also on these radio stations. I'm talking about this one and our sister station, 740 KVOR. I mentioned Air Force Merrimack over there tomorrow, Miami and the Gators here on Extra Sports 1300, and then a rare Sunday affair for the Colorado Springs Switchbacks taking on Tulsa. Roland and I will be on the call at 4, and that may be the next time that I get to chat with you. If not, we'll talk next week. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend and enjoy week 1 of college football. Talk next week.